If you fall out of that swing and break your neck, don't come crying to me. She taught me about contortionism. Would you look at the dirt on the back of your neck? She taught me about weather. Your room looks like a tornado's just hit it. Or behavior modification. Stop acting like your father. Have you heard that one before? About anticipation. Just wait till we get home. I've learned a lot of things about mothers. Last couple days I picked up on some things that was kind of interesting. Both of them about guys with military backgrounds. The first one was on Wheel of Fortune yesterday. It was a replay. But he was being interviewed as they do the contestants of different ones. And he says, I'm now attempting to do the biggest challenge I've ever had in my life. It's raising my 2 boys. He says, I've had 10 years of military experience in the Marines. He says, and this is still more challenging. So mothers, we appreciate you, and it's good to see Arch Trimble back with us today. I know he is just this pillar here that's been at this church for a long time. Arch, 92 or is it 93? 3, okay. But before he was 0 years old, he was here in his mother's womb, he'll tell you. So he's been around this place for a long time. And his goal, and my goal too, is to make sure this church moves forward. Amen. That there's always a place to go, that it has importance in our lives, as he said the other day to me, until the Lord comes again. So there's our goal. But we're going to talk about mothers, and the lesson that we're going to talk about today is lessons that I learned from a mother of Jesus, Mary. So as we're looking at that, we're thinking about Mother's Day. And so these 2 military people, one of them was a Marine, and obviously felt like his biggest challenge was raising his 2 boys, not being in the Marines. The second one was a fellow you may have heard about on the news this last week. He hijacked, you remember, a school bus in South Carolina, and there were 18 children on board. He drove just a short distance. He stopped the bus and he let the kids off. He drove a little further and he finally gave up, parked it and ran and whatever. It finally caught up with him when they said, why did you let the kids go away so soon? He says, they kept asking me all of these questions and I couldn't take it. You think raising kids is tough? Try being a mother and doing this for years. Thank you, moms. Appreciate you very much. Valuable lessons that I learned from Jesus' mother. We're talking about a 1-verse sermon for Mary. It'll take a little longer than 1 verse to get the communication to you this morning. It's parenting at its best when you look at what Mary does. It's family interaction, you can say. It's the story about a woman who told God's son what to do. Yes, it is. John chapter 2. We're looking at a comment that Mary makes. On this occasion, beginning in John 2, verse 1, Jesus is about to begin his ministry. Now, he has his 12 apostles with him, but he has yet to have performed a miracle or done anything in front of them. They've heard him speak. They've seen some things going on, but John will tell us in this context, he's not worked a miracle yet. But I want you to watch what's going on between Jesus and Mary, and then what Mary says to the servants at this wedding. So here's the lesson. Verse 1, on the third day after Jesus has his guys gathering around him, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. So Mary comes walking up to Jesus, seeing what's going on, kind of checks with the host, surmises there's a problem. She's a bit embarrassed for the bride and the groom. Embarrassed for the families that have put together this whole thing. Maybe a little bit for the master of ceremonies that he's taking care of all this, the one that's in charge of the wedding. But they've run out of wine. Being a typical mom, she feels a responsibility to help. And that's what moms do. She could have sat back and just said nothing. Done nothing and said, well, it was a nice wedding, nice being here, good luck in your future life together. May you have 100 children, whatever curse you want. No, a blessing you want to give to them, 100 children could be. But she comes to Jesus and says, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour's not yet come. Now, what do you think Mary's thinking that Jesus can do? Has Jesus ever performed a miracle not shown in front of his apostles before this time? Implication is dead that Mary, or alive, or whatever way you want to call it, dead to sure that Mary knows Jesus can do something. Has she seen a miracle before? I don't know. Maybe in the household, he's come to rescue for something particular in someone's life, and she's seen it before the ministry actually became. Maybe she just remembers back to when that angel is talking to her before she's even expecting Jesus. This is going to be God's Son. And great things are going to happen through him. She knows that God's power has been there. And someone even said to me, Craig, as we were talking before, did Mary forget? I mean, this has been a long time now. In raising this boy, he's become your child. Did she forget really that he's also God's Son? Obviously, he was special. Obviously, he was far more mature than anybody else. Have they had disagreements in their home before? I can say yes, definitely. For one, it's found in Luke. The Gospel of Luke, when Jesus and Mary and the family all go to Jerusalem. And while they're there, they perform their typical rituals that they've been doing every year, special day. And then they leave, and Jesus doesn't get on the train and go with them. I don't mean a physical train, like a caravan. And so he's not with the guys, and he's not with the women, as the caravans likely travel in that day and time. So it was real easy for them to miss Jesus not being there, because they're in different sections of the caravan. But as the caravan stops after some distance, and Mary and Joseph are talking back and forth, it dawns on them, Jesus isn't really with them. Maybe one of them said, how's Jesus doing? Well, I don't know. I thought he was with you. No, I thought he was with you. I mean, I've seen parents that have left their kids behind at the church building before. It's embarrassing. I won't say who, but I know some. Here. But here's Jesus. And I've often joked about Mary and Joseph heading back to Jerusalem and looking up to heaven and saying, I'm sorry, God, we didn't mean to forget your son. I mean, above all things, but I think it was more like they were just heartbroken and scared to death. How could we have lost him? Jesus did that on purpose. Now think about it. He didn't hurt them on purpose, but he stayed back on purpose. I want you to watch what's going on, because this has something to do with family interaction. He knew what he was doing when he stayed back. He is not the one that forgets to get on the caravan. He's not one to lose track of time. He's not a person that's irresponsible in any way. He stayed to talk to guys in the temple, and he does that work. And they finally come back, and as any parents would be, why did you do this to us? It wasn't like, how did you get lost? See, they knew he did it on purpose. They knew that Jesus never forgets things like that. He's never irresponsible. He's not the typical 12-year-old that's out climbing trees and hanging from the rafters and tearing things down. Maybe climbed a few trees. But he wasn't irresponsible. Why did you do this? You can imagine the discussion going on. So there were some family differences, but it was always Jesus in the right. So here we are, now another family interaction. It's going on, and as this thing is setting up, I just want you to see the picture, because they're at a wedding, and Jesus brings 12 people along with him. And it says that they were part of the invited people. So somebody should have known they had 4 fishermen that know how to drink. Now, I don't mean bad stuff. I'm just saying there's men present. You better count a little bit extra. You know, when you're having somebody over at your family gatherings, and you say, well, we've got 5 people, and there's so-and-so, you better count him for double. You know how that is, guys. And so they got 12 guys here. We're going to expect a little bit more. But they still run out, even though they planned for it, and Mary takes it on. And as you're reading the text here, I want you to see what's happening here, because Mary now is feeling somewhat concerned. I want you to see the compassion that she has and love that she has. And then she speaks to the servants in verse 5. And his mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. And that's the lesson for today. Mary knows that Jesus has the answer. I like the family interaction. Because when Jesus says, why is this my concern? What have I, it's not my time yet. And Mary's understanding all that. She doesn't break into an argument. She doesn't say, do you see the shirt that says I'm the mom, that's why? None of that. She just walks away. There's a neat relationship that they have going. And they've had it going all their life. And there have been different interactions where Mary'd been upset with Jesus, like when he stayed behind. And yet at this point, she knows he's going to do what's right, even though it's not his time. And so she walks away satisfied to what's going on. Now, as it continues on, verse 6, it says, now, there was a set of 6 water pots of stone. It doesn't say how big they are, but generally speaking, if you look up in commentaries, you're talking about something that holds several gallons, weighing a whole lot of weight, just the stone itself. So the water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification for the Jews, containing, or it does say, 20 or 30 gallons apiece. It doesn't say exactly, but we're looking at. And so Jesus says to them, fill them with water. And they filled up each one of them. And then he said to them, draw out some water and take it to the master of the feast. And they took it. They're doing exactly what Mary said. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that had been made wine, notice that little transition there, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who drawn water out, not wine, but drawn the water out, they knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom. And he said to them, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior, and you've brought out the best, or kept it to the last. And this is the beginning of the signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now you're seeing the interaction stuff that's going on here, but what I want to do is focus on that one little phrase that Mary says to the servants. Because if we realize what's going on, this is the mother of God, mother of Jesus rather, God's Son, speaking to us. Whatever he says, do it. Whatever. Jesus has reasons. You know, Isaiah chapter 55 gives us something important to think about. Verse 6, it says, seek the Lord while he can be found. Call upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, and let him have mercy on him and to our God. Verse 8, because my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. But as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Whatever he says, we don't understand all that's going on. God and Jesus have their reasons. So here you've got these guys, and they're filling the water pots, and they're going, what are we going to do, serve water? I don't know. She just said do whatever. Who is she? I don't know, but she's got something important. So we're dragging these heavy things over. We're going to fill them with water like it's going to really do something. But she said whatever, so we're going to do whatever. Anybody got some Kool-Aid we could pour in here and stir it around? And, you know, they didn't make it back then, you know. But what are you going to do with water? We're going to just start serving water. I guess that's what we have to do, but at least it's something, okay? So they're pondering in their mind what's going on, but they don't know because they don't understand what's happening. And we don't either in life. And we look sometimes at commands that God's given us, and we go, that don't make any sense. Why do we do it like that? Why should we worship like this? Why do we do, and some of those say it's not modern enough, it doesn't fit enough. Whatever it is, God has his reasons. You know, in the Old Testament, there are several different things that are in the book of Leviticus about cleansing yourself and dealing with things, kind of like washing before meals and different things like that. Now, you know, of course, especially during COVID, you wash your hands. We got hand pump stations around the building for all that protection. But they didn't know that back then. How about this thing that God required of his Jewish people called circumcision? They didn't know why. They didn't understand the purpose of it behind it, and especially why you did it on the 8th day. Like, big deal, 8th day, 6th day, 8th day, 10th day. Maybe you don't feel like doing it on the 8th day. Do it on the 8th day. Until studying the scriptures did I ever hear about the wherefore behind that. They didn't know back then, but there's a certain ingredient in our human system called vitamin K. And it produces, and some of you that have medical prothrombin or something like that, I'll kind of splur it out there. It's part of the interaction. It causes our blood to clot. And so going along when a child is first born, and at a certain level, they have so much vitamin K or blood clotting factor in their system. It's really low. If they bleed profusely because they don't have much protection for that blood clotting factor. Now, someday they're going to be up here at this level. But for whatever reasons, it starts coming along and they're growing. When on the 8th day, it goes bing, and it's way up here, way above normal on the 8th day. And then on the 9th, it's back down, and it starts getting down to normal, adult level. Am I right? On the 8th day, the Lord says, circumcision. And they're going, what does it make it 6th day, 8th day? Because God knows, you see. Whatever he says, do. And they're scratching their head, water, really? You know, take it and serve it to the master? Yeah, we're going to get in trouble over this. They're going to look at me like, what are you doing, servant? We're going to get fired, and the masters and the servants and all these people are wondering, just do whatever he says, even though we don't understand. That's just point number one in what Mary's saying here. Whatever. Number two, even because it doesn't seem to make sense in all of what's happening here, and we talked about this somewhat. They're worried about being fired, embarrassed, and all this. Just do whatever he says. Whatever he says, do. Going to my second page here. Give me a second. I'm thinking of John chapter 9. And as it begins, the apostles and Jesus encounter a guy who's blind. Question ensues about a spiritual nature. The question is, who sinned? Not spiritual enough, because Jesus knows what he's about to do, but the discussion goes on, and Jesus spits on the ground. See, little boys spit, don't they? Those that have boys, you know, they just like to spit. They like to spit in creeks and spit on the ground. And this guy that's born blind, it's been numbers of years, and he knows people spit. He can hear people spitting. He can't see it, but he can hear it. And so here Jesus comes up to him, and there's a little interaction going on, and then all of a sudden you hear spit. And the next thing you feel mud being put on your eyes, which is the story. And you're watching or listening and paying attention to what's happening, but think about the blind guy who's standing there waiting for something to happen, and then you hear him spit, and then you're feeling the mud on your eyes, and you're going, I know where that came from. I mean, that's not just water. What is he up to? And then you hear the comment, go wash in the pool of Siloam. I'd just rather kind of wipe it off. I can't see anyway. I mean, whatever he says, do it. And so this man does. We never are told what his name is, but he has a major section in the book of John. The entire chapter 9, is devoted to his interaction, his listening to Jesus, and the challenges he has going forward. And we'll come back to this toward the end here, but I want you to see that whatever he says, no matter how weird it seems to be, mud made with spit, put on my eyes, go to this pool, I've got to find my way through here, I can't see, how do I get there? Just do what he says. And then in the whole process, number 3 is do because he knows what he's doing. interaction sometimes with people who talk about being free to choose what they want and enjoy life and this and that. And then they get a little older in life and they look back at the decisions they made. And they understand a whole lot more why they should have been doing what God said to do way back when. And here they are 20, 30 years down the road, and they're readjusting everything and trying to make things straight, and they're paying for all of this past, and they're working, trying to get in a relationship with God, and the whole time they're wishing they could go back in time and have done those things and know that God's telling them what to do, because he knows when he says says we are to do things, he knows that those are the things that need to be done. Matthew chapter 17. I talked about this on a Wednesday night a few nights ago. One of the unusual little sections that you might even forget about, as Jesus is with his apostles and he's working through just in and out, just living or whatever, and along comes Peter, verse 24, Matthew 17. And when they come to Capernaum, those who received a temple tax, that's people that are taxing the temple for raising funds or whatever for what's happening at the temple, they came to Peter. And they said to him, does your teacher not pay the temple tax? And he said, well, yes, like every good Jew does. And then when he came into the house, Jesus anticipated him. He knows what he's thinking. He knows what he said. He knows what he's done. And he throws this out. What do you think, Simon? From whom did the kings of the earth take customs and taxes? From their sons or from the strangers? Well, Peter's smart. Yeah. Peter says, from strangers. Jesus said to them, then the sons are free. Nevertheless, lest we offend them, those you were talking about out there that we've not discussed yet, but I'm going to bring it up. Lest we offend them, go into the sea, cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first. And when you've opened its mouth, you will find a piece of money, and take that and give it to them for you and for me. Fishermen in here, of any sort. Anybody ever fished? I know we got some in here. Come on. Yes, okay. And Chris Hollingsworth better raise his hand. See pictures on him on the internet. He's pulling out these fish like this, and he throws them back. I'd never done that before. I've never caught any that big, and I surely wouldn't throw them back. But I do know one thing about fishing, and that's why I don't fish much. You throw the line in the water, and you pull it out, and you don't catch a fish. You throw the line in the water, and you pull it out, and you don't catch a fish. You can do this all day long. Amen? Yeah, had many days like that. What makes Peter think that Jesus knows what he's talking about? You go throw it in the line, and you're going to pull out a fish. I've done that before, Jesus. That doesn't work like that. And especially, anybody ever caught a fish with something in its mouth besides the hook? No. I mean, you could do this a zillion times and never catch a fish, even with anything in your mouth, especially with the exact size coin to pay for the tax times 2. But Peter doesn't walk away, and this guy doesn't. He's the carpenter. He's not a fisherman. He doesn't know. You could fish all day, and I've never caught a fish with anything in its mouth before. He just goes. He just goes, even though he's thinking, I've never done this before. But he knows what he's doing. And it moves into the second part here. It's because he trusts in Jesus. Because he knows what he's saying. In this whole lesson, this whole thing comes down to, Mary says, he knows what he's doing. You may not figure it out, but trust him. He knows what he's talking about. So if he says put water in there and take it, you just do what he says. And you will look like the best guy ever. The master of the ceremony is going to pull this out and go, where did you get this wine? And they're going to go, can't tell you. I mean, that's just, but such an incredible story. Like Mary said, just do whatever he says. And life changes for you if you'll trust him. Another fish story in Luke chapter 5, verse 5. As Peter's now been out with his buddies, and he's been fishing all night. And you know, I've never done fishing all night. I've stayed up all night a few times, playing games and doing all kinds of things. But I never really fished all night. I'd fall asleep, tell you. But I understand pulling those nets in and out and trying to pull in fish, it gets exhausting. So he's got to be worn out, and he's trying to put the nets away. And Jesus says, if you'll just go out there and put the nets on the other side. Okay. I mean, guys that do the fishing, you're standing on this, you're somebody over on the shore, and they say, if you throw the thing on the other side of the boat, you'll catch fish. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for hours. But Peter says, we've been fishing all night, Lord. Master, but at your bidding, we will do this. There was no reason about it. There was no understanding. It made no sense whatsoever why there's fish on this side and not on that side. But we're going to do it. And out of all that's happening here, you see, if you'll just do what he says in your life, even though you want to argue with him, even though those are things that you don't want to do, if you'll do it, you'll be blessed. You might be tired and cranky, and it might be some issue about sin that you need to quit doing, but if he says you need to do it, there's a reason for it. Whatever he says, just do it. Now back to that guy in John chapter 9, the one that was born blind, 40 years old, and he's going through all kinds of interrogation from the Pharisees because Jesus healed him on the Sabbath, and that was the challenge. And as this whole thing is coming down, he's being interrogated by the Pharisees because they don't like Jesus. And now he's the unwilling victim because he's been healed by Jesus on the Sabbath day. And so there's this battle back and forth to prove he was blind, now he sees, and who Jesus is, and it's back and forth in this whole thing. And so he's interacting, and they bring him back in, and they say, you tell us what you think. He said, must be a prophet. He can't be a prophet. He can't be from God because no man can do this on the Sabbath or heals on the Sabbath except if he's with God. And, on and on. And man says, I don't know. But the one thing I know is I was blind and now I see. If you do what Jesus says, even if you don't understand why, even if you disagree with it, if you just do what he says, you will be blessed. Bottom line. Lesson for Mary on Mother's Day. Do what Jesus says. Even when you can't figure out why. Even when it doesn't make sense. And you'll be blessed. Now there's one more lesson in this. And this is from Jesus. And the thought occurred to me as I've been reading through stuff and trying to reread and say, am I missing something in this? So I'm digging through this passage once again after thinking about it many times, and it hit me. Oh. And I'll start with the question here. Does Jesus know the thoughts of a man before he ever says them? Yes, no. Yes. Many times you'll read in the New Testament, in the Gospels, it'll say, and knowing their thoughts, he said to them, or knowing he had this in his heart, or the situation with Simon as he told him that they'd pay the tax, and then he comes in and Jesus already knows what's been going on out there. He knows the thoughts of people. He knows the hearts of individuals. Okay, when you think about that, now think about the whole situation. He walks into this wedding situation and everybody's there and they're having a great celebration. Jesus goes, they're going to run out of wine. He knows. And his mother starts, what's going on over here? Because he knows her. Not does he just know her because he knows her because she's mom. And he's watched mom interact. He's always watched mom dealing with people, and he knows she has compassion, but he knows what she's whispering over there. She's going to come over here in just a second. Here she comes. I know what she's going to ask, and I know what I'm going to say. And I know what I'm going to do. The whole thing was set up. by Jesus. And then he did what she asked. Even though he was the Son of God, there was a tremendous amount of respect for his mother in doing what she said. And he set the whole thing up as a lesson for you and me, if you see what's happening here. So you've got a lesson for Mary, do what Jesus says, and you got one from Jesus that says, respect your mom, even when you know everything. Because sometimes we think we do. But she's worthy of your respect. Jesus gave his mother that respect. I'm grateful for the things my mom did for me. She wasn't perfect. But I got some things in my heart that I'm going to hang on to that are valuable because they came from her and from my grandmother. So there's two of a family interaction, and they had it together. They very much did. Do you? Do you have it together, first of all, with Jesus? Are you a Christian? Are you doing what he says in spite of the fact that you don't like everything he asks you to do? You just do them anyway. And if you don't do them, you're not going to be blessed. Number one, because if you don't become a Christian or you don't live that kind of a life, you're not going to make it to heaven. Except a man is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Words of Jesus. Just can't happen. Are you a Christian? And are you living it? If the answer is no for either one of those, why don't you come on front? Right now, Mother's Day doesn't matter. It's a day to get right with God. Come while we stand and sing.
I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest I will come to thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leading my sin and strife. He is the true one, he is the just one, he hath the words of life. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to enter the kingdom, leaving the paths of sin. Friends may oppose me, foes may beset me, still will I enter in. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. You can be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, Craig. We want to send out a special welcome to guests and visitors and those who haven't been here in a good minute. I see some faces that I haven't seen in a little bit, and we're glad to have you back with us. And we're also thankful for those worshiping with us online. We miss you, and we hope to see you soon. If you would, please fill out an attendance card and pass it to the end aisle, guests and visitors, so we can have a record